Hello, and welcome to the podcast Justice Unbound, about women, religion, and the State of Israel. This podcast is written and produced by the Center for Women's Justice, CWJ. I'm your host today, Rivkah, and I'll be talking about the very important topic of marital contracts. Here's a shout out to my niece Ariella, who will be marrying her fiancé Yaakov this summer, Im Yirtzeh Hashem. Mazel Tov, Yaakov and Ariella. This episode is especially meant for you and for all your friends who are getting married in a Jewish wedding, Kedas Moshe V'Yisrael. I'll start out with a disclaimer. I'm not an attorney and I'm not giving any legal advice here. The information in this episode is in no way instead of speaking with an attorney or an expert on the topic. When I say agreement, contract, or document, I'm not talking about a financial agreement that defines what is his and what is hers and what will happen if the parties divorce, but rather an agreement that is specific for those who get married in a Jewish wedding and want to prevent the wife from becoming an agunah. We know you're in love, nothing bad, please God, will ever happen to anyone, but not everything is in our hands or the way we want it to be. It's always better to be safe than sorry. As the years go by, there are more and more agreements put out by various organizations, rabbis, and experts trying to save women from the plight of becoming an agunah, one who cannot get out of a marriage. What I would like to do today is to put some order in the various heskemim, to understand the logic behind them and to make things clear. Now, even if you're not getting married or don't have children getting married, you would want to listen to this episode. I think this is one of the biggest issues in contemporary Judaism. Of course, I will refer mostly to the agreements that the Center of Women's Justice created over the years or adopted and promoted, but I will also mention agreements promoted by others. After listening to this episode, you will have a better understanding of any agreement, prenup or postnup, Halachic or legal, that you encounter. Again, I'm talking only about agreements that apply to couples marrying Kedas Moshe V'Yisrael in a traditional Jewish ceremony. The problem of women in Jewish marriage is basically how she gets out of the marriage in difficult situations. That is, when the husband will not let her out of the marriage, or when he cannot give her get and let her out of the marriage. Or if in a very specific situation where he dies without offspring and she is bound to a brother-in-law who doesn't release her in a religious ritual known as chalitza. Remember, Jewish divorce depends on the husband. You can go back and listen to the first episode of this podcast where Susan and I talk about the fact that it is the husband in Jewish law that takes the woman as a wife, and it is he that must let her go, so to speak. Jewish divorce cannot be done without the husband doing it, literally. Hence, all the agreements try to solve this one basic issue: how to get divorced when the husband won't or can't set the wife free. This is why all the agreements come to protect the woman. Even if the agreement refers to both men and women equally, there is no comparison when it comes to the problems that they have to deal with if they want to end their marriage. Men can always carry on with their lives even if the woman refuses to receive the get, and his children from another woman will not be deemed mamzerim according to Jewish law as long as the other woman is not married. A woman who can't get a get, though, is a different story, because any new relationships she has will be considered adultery, and any new kids she has will be branded as mamzerim. I know that many of our listeners are from Israel as well as from other countries, so I won't go into the details of what is out there in each country. I want you to understand in a very general way the types of agreements that are available and the different methods they use to solve the problem of allowing the woman freedom if she wants out of the marriage. Please use this knowledge when you turn to whoever you turn to for a good agreement. So let's get into it. Here are some questions you should be asking if you want to understand an agreement. First off, what's the purpose of the agreement? Does it save a woman from classic aginot, like when the husband has disappeared or is missing and cannot give a get for some other reason? Does it help the woman out in the case of a recalcitrant husband when the husband refuses to give a get? And then there's the issue of how the agreement can be used. Can it be enforced in a court of law, or can it only be enforced in a bedin, a religious court? Does it allow a bedin to declare the marriage is void in the eyes of Jewish law, and then the woman may not need a get at all? Next, how do you sign it? Do you need to sign it in front of a lawyer? Do you need 2 kosher witnesses, meaning 2 men over the age of 13 who are not related to each other or to the parties involved? Do both sides sign or just the husband? And if it matters to you, which rabbis support the agreement? Is it acceptable in the eyes of rabbis who are acceptable to you? And what actually does acceptable mean? What if the rabbi that you follow not only does not support this agreement, but claims that signing this contract can cause the get to be a get museh, a get that was enforced upon the husband, and therefore it would not hold as a kosher get, and your divorce would not be a divorce? My dear friends, that's serious. So, CWJ has 3 basic agreements. In general, there are 3 basic agreements. Other agreements are tweaked from these. Each one of the contracts that I will mention as we go along comes to solve a different situation. If you understand this, you'll be able to analyze any agreement that you look at. Maybe this is the time to note that there would be 2 general methods to solve the issue of aginut. As you know, in a Jewish marriage, a woman can only be freed with a get given by the husband. So one strategy would be to somehow get the husband to give the get, even if he refuses, or to somehow get the get to the woman without the husband's help. And the other would be to somehow prove that the marriage is void and never happened. Hence, the woman does not need a get at all. Just keep in mind all this as we go along. So let's talk about agreement or contract number 1. Heskem liminiat sarvanut get. Legal agreement to prevent get refusal. The basic problem for a woman getting married halachically is for her to have the security of knowing that she can opt out even against his will. So this first and basic agreement would be to solve the situation where the husband can give a get but won't give a get and allow the woman the freedom to carry on with her life. In this case, she knows and he knows that as long as she is married religiously and doesn't have a get from her husband, she cannot go ahead and carry on with her life. The husband may be withholding the get to take revenge on her, to extort her, or whatever. Bottom line, the husband is here. He can give the get, but won't give the get. Women like these are agunot, but in Israel, we're used to calling them misoravot get, women who are refused the get. We differentiate them from women who are classical agunot because the way to solve it is different. The semi-solution for this problem, and I say semi because it doesn't solve the issue in all cases, is an agreement that the couple signs before they get married. As I said, heskem liminiat sarvanut get, a legal agreement to prevent get refusal. This agreement requires the husband or the wife to pay the other side if he or she is holding back the get and refusing to cooperate with the divorce procedure. So, this agreement says that if the wife requests a divorce and the husband refuses to grant her divorce, or vice versa, he or she will have to pay him or her a fixed monthly or daily payment, whatever the agreement says. I'm not going into the details of what would make it a kosher agreement and what would make it problematic in the eyes of halakha, just pointing out that the wording has to be very specific and careful to make sure it doesn't seem that it is an enforced get given against the free will of the husband. This is the most basic and simplest agreement you can sign. Couples have been signing this for decades. This can prevent divorce refusals because, let's face it, no one wants to pay someone else money. There are different agreements of this type, and all organizations and rabbis that try to help women have created some kind of agreement on these lines. The RCA in America has an agreement like this. In Israel, organizations such as Yad Leisha, Kolech, and Mavoy Satum may have their own agreement or use ours, CWJ's. Even Sohar rabbis have their own agreement. The differences between them will be on the following issues. How long does the side wanting out have to wait until the agreement is activated? A half a year, 18 months? Does a civil court enforce it or rather a religious court? Here's an important note. Some agreements mention that all monetary issues and arguments between the parties must be taken to a religious court. Please don't sign that. That does not need to be signed. Probably better to go to a civil court when possible, so as not to get everything tied in with the get. By the way, you sign this agreement before the marriage, but you can also sign an agreement like this after the marriage if you want. We have these on our site. I'll leave links in the notes for our agreement in English and in Hebrew. Let's recap. We've discussed the first agreement. It is the basic and simplest agreement signed before the wedding that prevents get refusal. The method is a little bit of pressure on the husband or whoever to carry on with the divorce proceedings. Of course, as you can imagine, this agreement doesn't solve the whole get refusal issue. That would be too good to be true. But it does cover the basic idea, being that if you refuse to cooperate with the divorce proceedings, you pay the other side money. Now we've come to the second type of agreement. The second type of agreement is a halachic agreement of conditional marriage. It goes to the root of the Jewish marriage, and it's different from the first. We call it in Hebrew shtar hatna'ah, hatzara hilchatit limni'at aginut v'chalitza. In English, we've called it halachic declaration to prevent aginut and chalitza. This contract was created to solve the problem of classical aginut, where the husband is not here, or he's here and not able to give a get for various reasons. Maybe he's sick or in a coma. As a side comment, I will say that actually this agreement could also solve the get refusal problem if used by the rabbis, but it isn't used for that. This kind of contract would be used only in very problematic cases where the husband cannot give a get. This method helps the woman out of the marriage without the need of a get by annulling the marriage. In this case scenario, we're not even trying to pressure the husband because there is, so to speak, no husband around to pressure. He's disappeared or incapable of giving a get. The only way to solve this, as I have explained, would be to go back to the roots and check out the wedding ceremony. We are suggesting that the marriage be done purposely on condition that the couple are together. So, the husband signs a declaration before the wedding saying that this marriage, kiddushin, is on condition that we, the couple, are living together, and if we, the couple, separate for 18 months, and the wife asks the Beit Din to activate the halachic document, the marriage will be null and the woman won't even need a get. It's as if the groom is saying to the bride, Harei at mikudeshet li b'tnai. You are sanctified to me on condition that, and then we spell out the condition. Or rather, he signs a contract saying that when he says Harei at mikudeshet li, he means it to be according to the following conditions. I have to tell you that this is totally acceptable halachically, but some people don't like it on principle. They feel that it undermines the sanctification of marriage. Frankly, I don't feel that way, to say the least. I feel like, why is getting a woman stuck forever thought of as being a sanctified marriage? Why not do what we can do in advance to help women out of problematic situations that Jewish marriage has put them in the first place? Remember, if chas v'shalom, a woman is in an accident and continues life as an invalid, the husband has no problem carrying on with his life. If this happens to the husband, the woman is stuck forever. So, this kind of declaration on the part of the husband at the time of the wedding or just before would save her from the horrific outcome of being stuck in a marriage that no one can get her out of. Can it hurt you when you marry? No, it can't. Rabbis, even very conservative small c ones, don't care if you do it. I know that as a fact. Can it hurt you if you activate it in the future? Yes, it may. If you use it to annul the marriage and then marry or have children with someone else, some rabbis may say that these children would be mamzerim because they don't like the idea of annulment. But you may want to sign it anyway because you may find a Beit Din in the future that will accept this contract. And in fact, in very hard cases, even the most conservative small c rabbis will probably paskin by it, and allow a woman to carry on with her life, that is, marry and have children without them being deemed as mamzerim. As far as I can see, more and more couples are using it. More and more rabbis are considering it. Do yourself a favor and sign something in advance that will help the rabbis conclude later on, if God forbid in need, that the marriage can be annulled. You may want to go back and listen to episode number 4, where Rabbi Chuck Davidson, an Orthodox rabbi, head of the Halachic department at Chupot, says that they make every couple sign CWJ's conditional marriage. Now, I'm going to get a little sidetracked before we go into the third agreement. This second type of agreement, the conditional marriage, has 2 conditions in it. One has to do with the couple living together and not separated. The other condition has to do with chalitza. If you don't remember what chalitza is, then please go back and listen to episodes 6 and 7. There, Susan and I discuss chalitza and the need for a conditional agreement on that so that women don't get stuck in a situation where the dead husband's brother won't or can't free her. This second condition says that the couple is married on condition that if she is in need of chalitza and the husband's brother doesn't do this ceremony within 6 months and she activates it, the marriage will be null. At CWJ, we put both conditions into one document and have been promoting it for years, but we also have an agreement that has only the second condition in it having to do with chalitza. This would make the agreement to be much more conservative, small c, than the agreement that has both conditions, which include the one about living together and not being separated. So what have we said so far? Let's recap from the beginning. Until now, we've mentioned 2 types of agreements. The first, a legal agreement to make any side pay the other side if they refuse to cooperate with a divorce. That is done by the method that I called somehow getting the husband to give a get. The second, a halachic statement by the husband that the marriage is conditional. That can solve major agunah problems where there is no husband to give the get. It's solved by getting to the root of the issue and annulling the marriage. Now let's try and explain the third type of agreement. This one we called shtar bitachon hilchati. Minui shaliach leget liminiat aginut. In English, power of attorney for giving a get. I'll leave a link for these documents in English and in Hebrew. What happens if couples are already married but want to save the woman from becoming an agunah if something happens to the husband? I married 40-something years ago and there was no talk at all then about any of this. Thank God my husband and I live happily. I'm not worried about him refusing to give me a get. But I don't ever want to be, chas v'chalila, in a situation of aginut. If anything happens to my dear husband, I would like to know, and he would like to know, that I can be free to continue taking care of him while I'm free in my own personal life. CWJ has created a shtar bitachon, a bill of security, a contract signed by the husband during the marriage, where he appoints an agent to give his wife a get if anything should happen to him, or if they're not living together for 18 months and she asks a bet din to activate the contract. Frankly, everyone should be signing this even if they've signed the first 2 contracts. Can it hurt to sign it? No. Do all the rabbis accept it? No, but many rabbis will accept this, and we hope that in the years to come, more and more rabbis will join us in trying to protect women. The need for this type of shtar bitachon, agency for giving a get, came up especially these days because of the war. Lots of soldiers who go off to the war want to make sure that their wives do not become agunot because of various reasons of them not being capable of freeing their wives. In fact, it was even brought up in the parliament, the Knesset of Israel, where women's organizations have suggested that the soldiers all sign this document, but they haven't yet decided on it. This document was drafted by Rabbi Yoni Rosenzweig together with attorney Nitzan Kaspi Shiloni from CWJ in 2016, years ago. It is not a get al t'nai, a conditional get which is mentioned in the Talmud about the times of Bet David. It is not the same thing as explained by the sages about why Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, was actually divorced from Uriah when she was together with King David. This is something else. It's based on a contract that Rabbi Yitzchak Herzog got soldiers to sign in the Second World War before they went into combat. Rabbi Shlomo Goren, past chief rabbi of Israel, also suggested something of the sort. But whereas those rabbis had in mind that this document can solve the issue of missing soldiers, our new document comes to solve another problem also. That of a soldier who comes back from the war harmed, is kept alive for many years, but without capacity to give the get. Remember, medical ways of keeping people alive were not possible in the past. I would suggest that if you are Hebrew speaking and want to hear a great episode on our Hebrew podcast, go listen to Mivakrot Barabbanut, episode number 36. I'll leave a link to it in the notes. There, Nitzan and I interview and talk with Rabbi Yoni Rosenzweig about this document. Other organizations in Israel have taken this basic document of CWJs and made changes to it, and therefore today there are several agreements like this that exist and are being promoted by Kolech, Yad Leisha, and Mavoi Satum. The great advantage of this agreement is that it can be signed at any stage of the marriage, and it's not only for soldiers that are missing, God forbid, or that come back severely injured and cannot give a get to their wives and let them free. It can solve the problem of a woman whose husband at any point in life cannot give her a get and she wants to be freed. The method is, of course, the first one I noted, which is getting the get to the woman. This time, it's not by pressuring, but by him appointing an agent in advance to give the wife a get for him. My husband and I, as I mentioned above, did not sign a conditional marriage before we got married, but we did sign this shtar bitachon just a couple of years ago. It makes me feel very safe. I know my husband cares about me enough to not want me to be in this terrible situation of aginut, no matter what happens to him. We're coming to the end of this episode. I would like to say a few more words about Jewish marriage. I really think that all these contracts / agreements / documents or what have you that we are getting couples to sign are just not good enough. We're trying to patch up a very big problem of Jewish marriage. It's not working for women in many ways. It takes away her liberty and her security. We need a new way of getting married that does not need an extra agreement to save women from the harm that the marriage can do. We need a new Jewish way of getting married that will be sanctified and holy in the eyes of the Jewish people, but one that does good for women. This is not acceptable. I'm not the only person that feels that all this is not respectful for women, to say the least. There are some new ideas of different types of marriages floating around, and we will refer to some of these new ideas in future episodes. Thank you for listening. I hope I was of some help. Please share. This podcast was produced thanks to the generous support of the Gimbrich Family Foundation. Thank you, Rachel Stomel, for graphics and helping with editing this episode and more. I am Rivkah Lubitch. Stay tuned for more episodes on women, religion, and the state of Israel.